Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to the third video in this C# tutorial series. So this video is going to be the first to really dive into some code. And I'm not going to lie to you, not really a whole much because we're just going to be going over primitive types. But we are going to dive into some code. So what is a primitive type? Well, a primitive type is something that can be created by writing a literal, okay? And it can be declared constant. So, in other words, it's really just the building blocks of the classes that you'll write in classes in the .NET framework. And it just pertains of integers and doubles and floats and all that stuff, okay? So if you are familiar with programming languages in general, then you're obviously going to understand this really quite easily. It's going to be pretty straightforward. However, if you're not, just pay attention that these are a lot of times the building blocks for everything else that will develop inside of C#, okay? So they are really important. So let's go ahead and create a console application and name it primitive types. So the first thing we're going to look at is the integer, okay? So the integer, when you just type in int, it will infer a 32-bit, okay? Which you could do also int 32, int 16, unsigned int. Okay, so but when you just type in int, it's going to be inferring that you're going to be using a 32-bit integer, okay? So we'll have int x, okay? And then so we now have a variable of type integer called x, and we don't have to give it a value or anything, and we can, but we're not going to, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually print it to the console, and we're going to see what its default value is, okay? So if you don't initialize x of type integer, what's going to happen, all right? So what we can do is console write line, and then we'll do x, and then of course console read line, so that we can see it. And it's static because this function main is also static, so it has to be. And we'll get into more static methods and types as the series goes on, but right now just don't worry too much about it. But let's go ahead and look at what it's going to print out when we don't specify a value for x, okay? So let's go ahead and start it. And it prints out 0, okay? So if you don't initialize a integer, it's going to default to 0, okay? C# is going to be, okay, the value is 0, but it will warn you in the IDE that it's not being used, okay? And will always have its default value 0. So we can always remedy that by giving it a value of 5, and that will give it a value of 5. Or we can actually just declare it, and then somewhere, because it's global now to this class, so anything in this class can be able to use it. So it's a global variable inside the program class. We can do x equals 34, and then assign it that way, okay? So then that will print out 34. Now, let's go ahead and move over to strings, okay? So string can be really just capital S or lower. So you can just usually have these lowercase. So string x, okay? So now x is now it's gonna give us a value because it said it cannot implicitly convert it. So what we can do now is just not initialize it to anything. And let's see what its default value for x will be. So nothing prints out, okay? So it is in fact empty, all right? So it's an empty string, and its default value is null. So when we're printing out, nothing happens because its default value is null, all right? So we could do other types like double, which can hold decimal values, okay? So like 1.3, 1.4, 2.8, stuff like that, all right? And this will also print out 0. Now what about a bool? Like what about a boolean, you know? So this is usually holds true or false, and we can declare that like with the keyword bool. And what's this default value? It is false, okay? So it basically helps to know just like the default values, just in case you don't have one, or if you don't really feel like initializing it, you know it will be a certain value. And then you can of course always give it a value like true in this case, false. And then you can do some logic like x equals not x, okay? So what will happen will be x equals the opposite of false. So right now it's false, right? So false, and then it will do the not operator, which will convert it to true, and then it should now print out true. All right, so some logic on that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff they can do with these, but these are pretty much, you know, just explanatory, but I did want to go over them because like I said, they are the building blocks and we will be using them a lot, and it helps to know just the default values and when to use them. Okay, so going back to the int, say if we give it to like a 1, then we can do the plus plus operator. Okay, if you're used to C++ or Java, we still have that, or we can do it before, okay, so that it will print out. So if we do plus plus x, okay, it's still going to print out, it's going to print out 2 because it happened before it actually printed out, where if we do it on the other side, we're going to get just 1 because it printed to the console and then it incremented to 1, and then it's same thing with minus minus. So these are just a few things, and of course you can do string concatenation, so you can have a string x, and then what you could do is x equals hello, and then you can do x plus equals, and we'll do world. Okay, so this will concatenate it. Okay, and this line right here is the same as doing x equals what it was plus world. Okay, so these two are exactly the same, but this is just shorthand, of course. But you can just concatenate a string on another string and use the plus equals like that as well with a string, as well as a float, or a double precision like a double. So these are just a few things that I wanted to show you, kind of get a little acquainted with things and see that the primitive types in C#, if you're coming from another high-level language, is of course not too different, and hopefully that you become you can start seeing that it's really just an easy transition if you are coming from C++ or Java, or really even Python, even though Python is a little different, but there's more of a similarity with the way that you think as a programmer. All right. So with that being done, some of the boring stuff out of the way, we'll go ahead and we'll start working on methods. Okay, and a method is nothing but just a something to do a job and may or may not return a value. Okay, so it's a way to segregate our code into smaller blocks, so that we are more easily to manage and then maintain and then just call upon. Okay, so methods are really great, and of course you don't want one huge million line program that's just one big method, of course, because that just wouldn't make sense. So you'd want to break that up into different jobs. Okay, so just think of methods or functions as jobs. All right, and we're going to get into that, of course, in the next video, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, guys.